Welcome to the DenCast, everybody. This is our fifth episode. Joining us tonight is Sioux High football coach and assistant principal Scott Menard. Scott, thank you for being here. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. I'm kind of upset that I was the fifth guest and not the first, but we'll deal with that down the road.
Well, we looked into your schedule and there was a lot going on.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Actually, we're disappointed that you had to wait until fifth. We wanted you to be first,
Oh,
but
okay. Now he's buttering me up. All right.
Uh-huh.
Well, thanks. I appreciate being here.
So coming off a 5-4 season last year, what were your thoughts on the way that season played out?
Well, looking back on it now, I thought it was honestly probably, and I don't think I was the only one that thought that. I think it was disappointing. I think it was below our expectations because I really thought with the guys that we had coming back. I mean, we had some players that had been on the varsity for 4 years, 3 years, you know, and as we got through the year, we had a couple of games. The Cadillac game we probably should have won. We had a fumble on there too. We got stopped on downs on their 15 to end the game. And I'll be honest, Scott, there's been years where we've gone 5-4. We've missed the playoffs by a game or something where we've had one game where, like, this is the game that we have to win because at the end of the schedule what we have. And we knew that Gaylor and Petoskey were quality programs, and that was going to be tough sledding for us. The one that really hurt us was the Marquette game because we had River, Rakegum, and Kale Bell, were our two starting running backs, were both out that game. They're both starters on our defense. Will Ullman broke his wrist on the third play of the game. So we were down to our fourth and fifth running backs. And after that, it just, we were able to come back and win a couple of games, but we just couldn't find a groove. And like I said, I think we all kind of had a sour taste in our mouth at the end of the year. And looking back at it now, I'm not sure it was as much stuff on the field as it maybe was just, we kind of had some kids that they didn't have the chemistry that you need, and I've had teams that were much less talented that performed a lot better just because they got along. And that's something I think that we're really looking at, focusing on for this year's team.
Well, you guys were basically a mash unit by the end of the year last year. I remember the Marquette game.
Right.
Ullman goes down on the third play with a broken collarbone.
Yeah, that's right, not wrist, collarbone. Yeah.
And at that point, you guys were pulling people out of the stands to hand the ball to, it seemed like.
We were, because then it was maybe 3 or 4 plays later, Ryan Tanaik, who, was really a big defensive player for us and went to the All-Star game this summer. He went down with a concussion, so he was out. So, we were just really, I hate to say scraping the barrel, if that's not the right terminology, but essentially there were a lot of guys that we did not expect to play that played in the first quarter of that game.
So it's safe to say a lot of kids were getting opportunities that you weren't necessarily expecting them to get.
Absolutely,
at that point.
And I honestly, in the long run, it ended up being something that was probably beneficial for us for this year, because we did get some kids that probably thought, I don't have a chance to get on that field during a Marquette game. All of a sudden, they're in the game. We're like, okay, we see what they can do. They got a little bit more spot time as the season went on, and now they have at least a taste of what it's going to be like when they're really a premier player this year.
So the year before, you guys, I thought, got jobbed out of the playoffs. You finished 6-3 that year.
Right. Well, that was I think that was our fourth year at finishing 6-3, and of those 4 years, we only went to the playoffs once.
And the team that you beat, oh my goodness, the Stags, was it Benzie Central?
Benzie Central, not Kingsley's the Stags. Benzie Central's the Huskies.
Okay, the Huskies.
Yeah, we beat them at the end of the year, and they were 3-5.
And they go to the playoffs.
And they go to the playoffs.
Yeah, I thought the whole system there was a little...
Yeah, and we always seem like we're late to the game when it comes to the playoff numbers and systems. After COVID, when everybody got in, which I thought was a great system. We had one less game during the season, but every team got in. We won a couple playoff games and had a nice matchup against Cadillac, who we lost to, but they went to the finals that year. The next 2 years, we were 6-3, and we got into a new conference because obviously, being up here, it's very difficult to find games. And the Big North was still the Big North. It still had both Traverse City schools, so that wasn't an option. So we jumped into that Northern Michigan Football League with Traverse City, St. Francis, and Kingsley, and Ogama Heights, and Sheboygan, and some of those teams, because that was the natural progression of where we were going to go. And then the state turned around and said, 6 wins isn't enough. Now you have to have points, and nobody in their right mind would voluntarily schedule Traverse City, St. Francis, because they're a Division 7 school that goes to the state finals every year. and they're having trouble scheduling games right now because nobody wants a part of that because you can't get points for it. But we didn't know that when we got in the conference, and by the time we were established in the conference, the playoff system changed, and so we were, left, by the wayside for 2 years.
And it's really unfortunate because travel-wise, that conference worked out well for you guys, I thought.
Absolutely, yeah.
I would much rather go south in November than I would go west.
Right, right. And we really liked it. I mean, I really liked a lot of the coaches. I mean, we were really treated well when we went down there, and we'd go to Kingsley, we'd go to Benzie, we'd go to Traverse City, St. Francis, and we had some success. Um, but when they changed that system, we had no choice but to leave it, which was unfortunate for us and for the conference.
Well, yeah, you guys could have gone 8-1 or even 9-0 in that conference and potentially not been in the playoffs because of the point system.
Honestly, Scott, if we would have been in the conference last year, we probably wouldn't have beaten Kingsley because they won the final state Division 6, I think, state championship.
Right.
We probably would have run the table other than that, and you're right, we probably wouldn't have gotten in.
Which to me is just crazy.
It is because, and I've been bringing this up for years. I said, how about giving a playoff point for every 100 miles you drive? Because that's that's a situation we're in right now. I mean, look at this year's schedule. We're lucky. This is our best road schedule we've had in years, and we still go to Escanaba, which is 3 hours. We still go to Gala, which is an hour and a half or 45 minutes. We still go to Petoskey, that's an hour and a half. You talk to schools downstate, they don't do that. And our first game's at St. Clair Shores, which is 5.5 hours away.
Well, I mean, realistically, though, the Sioux is the only 11-man program within 150 miles.
West, it's Manistee, who's still holding on, and then south, it's Sheboygan. So, yeah, I mean, between around 100, right, or 80, whatever, but still, like, you're not going to go anywhere else in the state and have that much distance around you and not find an 11-man school. And those, Sheboygan, they're debating if they want to play us, after this year because they got into that reformed Northern Michigan League, and obviously Manistee doesn't want to be part of us, so they're, that's not an option. So, it's tough because, again, we just find ourselves surrounded by 8-man schools, and so a 3-hour trip is not out of the question for us.
Well, you ran into the same problem right before Newberry went 8-man, right? They didn't want to play the Sioux.
Well, Newberry, and honestly, almost the same situation, Red Yard. St. Ignace, credit to them because they played us their last year. I think it was their last year of 11-man when, they probably didn't need to, but, they liked the tradition and they've always had a strong program, and they stuck to the schedule where we had, like you said, Newberry, and maybe some other schools didn't want any part of that.
Right. So we'll come back to football, but you've taken on some new responsibilities at Sioux High. When did you become one of these, or the assistant principal?
This will be the start of my 3rd year. So, yeah. So, it's been interesting, but I'll be in year 3, and it's definitely getting easier as I put the time in for it.
Sure. Which I'm assuming you still like coaching better, but is administrator more of your future route, or will you continue to do both?
Well, I don't know how much of a future I have left. I'm getting up there, but I'll stay in administration, as long as they'll keep me in there. And I've been fortunate, as Pat has, that they've let us both coach, in that role when really that's been unheard of. But that's just a comment on how hard it is to get coaches,
right?
So the fact that they let Pat coach when he took the AD's job, I got the assistant principal's job after him, and I just said I kind of want the Pat Bennon deal. And they agreed, which was, they didn't have to, but they did, and they've been very generous with the time that I need for coaching, and it's really worked out very well.
Now, are you still in the classroom at all, or not?
No, I'm not in the classroom. Like I said, we've got a staff that's getting older, but I don't think at this point that I'll need to have to go back in anytime soon.
So we should see Sioux High graduate GPAs on the rise. Then is what you're telling me.
Yes. At least the 10th graders' GPAs in English will probably be much higher now. So
perfect.
Yeah,
perfect. 2 years ago, you had the whole package. You kind of had a solid line. You had a good backfield. Last year, you lost the line, but you still had the solid backfield. Now you're kind of starting over, sort of at both spots. Am I correct?
Yeah, I don't know if rebuilding is the correct terminology, but that's, We're reshaping, I guess, what we have in the team that we have. And we Evan Arbick went to Northern. He started yesterday. Adam Horgan's played line for us 2 years ago. He's at Alma. The Lujan kids at St. Norbert's. Obviously, Callan's at Northwestern. So we've lost some kids and some size the last couple of years. Chris Kiefer is a cadet at West Point. And so we've lost some athletes and some good kids. And that's really our task right now, which is to, kind of find out what we have. And honestly, Scott, I don't know what we have. And we talk a little bit here more, but we started this summer with what I thought was maybe going to be 22 kids. And we've had kids come out of the woodwork since then. Our 7-on-7 numbers have been great. And I think we're going to be up to maybe close to 35. But it's a lot of kids that don't have varsity football experience.
But you guys have made sort of lemonade out of lemons in that regard the last few years. I mean, Ryan Tonight was a 1-year varsity football player.
Yep.
Carter Olszewski was a
Yep.
1-year football player. I think Max Scott didn't play but 1 or 2 years.
Played 2 years. Cam Labadie came out last year and started on both sides of the ball for us. He hadn't played football since middle school. So, there are those kids, and I tell those guys all the time. I said, you got to be ambassadors for our program. I said, I told Cam, after he got done with football, I said, you got to tell everybody on that team that they're not going to get hurt. It's not what they might think it is, And we told Carter and Max the same thing. I said, tell those guys that played basketball, and I'm convinced that's why Ryan played, because I think he saw the success that Max and Carter had. And we've got some kids that have been walking the hallways that are good athletes that, because either they have friends that are playing football or they just saw what success with other kids had, that they've come out, and now that's what we have to do, is we've got to make lemonade out of what lemons we have.
I think Ryan Tonight probably was injured more often playing basketball than he was playing football this season.
Yeah, and we try to tell the kids that, it's hard because sometimes it's not just them, or you know how it is, Scott. I mean, you've been around enough to know that there's always an unfair preconceived notion about football, right? It's just a bunch of meatheads who just bang helmets all the time, and concussions run rampant, and injuries are here and there, and knock on wood, and I better make sure I find some, that we haven't had a legit concussion concern in probably 5 years. We haven't had a major injury, though we did lose some kids to some minor things last year, in probably a decade. So, I mean, I think that notion of football being such a violent sport that kids are always getting hurt is not fair. And we have had a lot of kids that played football that ended up losing more games in basketball, or honestly, in baseball or track or soccer, than they did in football.
Well, I remember when I was still with the boys basketball program, watching Mike Fitzner walk the sidelines during football games, just nervous as a cat, because
Right.
some of his better players were out there on the
Sure.
field, and he was always worried about somebody getting hurt.
But and I think with our guys, especially guys that have now committed to playing 3 sports, if you're going to play basketball, and you're going to play baseball or track, and you're going to play football, you're probably doing all of those things in the summer. So your body is built for the different complex movements that you're going to have in every sport. And like I said, I think when our kids show up in August, they're in great shape. And, we do a lot of conditioning. We don't do a lot of banging because, I don't think there's any real positivity in hammering each other, for the first 3 or 4 days of practice. So we do a lot of conditioning. We do a lot of stretching. And I think that we've built a program in that way that's really been beneficial to us as far as the physical shape our kids are in. And I don't really know if we've had any kids that have transitioned into winter sport being injured.
Now, how many kids, you said you had a few come out for 7-on-7 that you weren't expecting necessarily. How many kids have you had out?
So what we will do, Scott, is we'll start strong. We'll have a lot of kids come out in June, and then as the summer goes on and things happen, vacations and other sports start their open gyms and their team camps, that our numbers will dwindle. But this year was weird because it actually went in reverse. So we started with really low numbers in June, and we just kept saying, because we went every Monday and Wednesday, we said, listen, go find a friend, just talk to them, tell them what we're doing, and just try to get him here the next day. And it just kind of slowly multiplied. And we got to the end of June, and we had a dead week because the state says you have to have one, which is usually around July 4th. When we came back from the dead week, we had twice as many kids. And by the time that we left, oh gosh, which would have been last week, we probably had 30 to, well, this is a few JVs in there, but about 30 to 35 kids on a Monday or Wednesday night in the middle of July, which is that's a big number for us.
Yeah, my brother coached at Saginaw Heritage before he retired from
Mm-hmm.
teaching a few years ago, and he and I had a conversation one night where we were talking about numbers and football and whatnot, and he was complaining to me that he was really bummed this year because he only had 35 kids out for the freshman team.
Right.
And I said, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
There are places up here where 35 kids would comprise an entire program.
For sure.
JV,
For sure.
varsity,
But when it comes to numbers, I mean, when we talked to all the coaches that we talked to, and this is Cadillac and Alpena, and this is Escanaba and Marquette, they're all kind of dealing with what we're dealing with now, which is that whether there's too many options or kids just aren't interested in sports, but they're just not getting the numbers. We went down to a Gaylord 7-on-7, and they still have decent numbers, but a lot of the other teams that were down there, they brought 10, and we brought 19. And that was 19 varsity kids to that 7-on-7. So we were really happy with the production and the numbers that we got during the summer.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. It's my understanding that you guys took the field against my alma mater, the Mighty Bucks of Roscommon.
Yes.
I'd be interested to know how that particular part of 7-on-7 went.
They worked us pretty well. Yeah, I mean, we went down there and like we said, I mean, if you've seen us, and we're going to do some things different this year, but if you've seen us, obviously you know that the 7-on-7 format's probably not our strength on offense. It's what we want to work on in defense that we'll see more things that will pertain to what we'll see in the season. So they did pretty well. Actually, we played. Who did we play? We played Roscommon, Elk Rapids, and Charlevoix. And Charlevoix and Elk Rapids were in the championship. We were the only team to play the two championship teams. So, but it was good. It's a good experience. And like I said, what it was the first time that this group of kids, and especially some kids that had never been playing football or varsity football, were actually on the field against other varsity athletes and in a team setting. So we learned a lot. We filmed it. We watched it. We broke some plays down for the kids just so they can see. And yeah, it's just unfortunate, like I said, because we're surrounded by so many 8-man teams that we can't get as much 7-on-7 competition as we'd like in the summertime.
Right. What do they do 5-on-5? Is that right? When they do theirs, the 8-man teams?
Actually, we used to go to Newberry, and they would want to do full 8-on-8.
Oh.
And we would, it didn't really help us much, so they would accommodate us. But yeah, I think they do some 5-on-5 as well because they don't use a center or a couple of linemen. But yeah, we're just trying to find schools that still play 11-man that want to get together in the summer. And it's been tough to find, but we're lucky. Gaylords decided to have a program, where they do a big man competition that day, and then they do a 7-on-7 tournament. And so we've gone down that the last 2 years.
Okay. So one of the things we've talked about is players.
Yep.
New players, new faces. There's also some new faces on the coaching staff. You've had some pretty major turnover this year for the first time in quite a while.
Yeah. So Matt Johnson, Gordy Campbell, Brad Bovin, Brendan Kreiderman, that was my staff. Gordy resigned. Going to kind of do some more work with Marquette's, and obviously Callan's at Northwestern. So,
sure,
to be able to go down and watch a Northwestern game and not have to worry about coming back from the road. And that was obviously a monster loss because he and I have been doing it since 2006. Matt Johnson came on in 2017, but he took the principal's job at Pickford, so his time was limited. And then Brad Bovin, who has been a teacher at the school since 2017 and started coaching in 2018, took a teaching job somewhere else. So other than Brendan, who was the youngest of the staff, and I coached in 2016 and 2017, all those guys are gone. So it's been, we talk about the lack of experience for the players. We've got some guys on the varsity staff that are, I'm teaching as much sometimes those guys as I am. But what's interesting and it's nice is that they're enthusiastic, right? I mean, I can see in them where I was, 25 years ago. And they're really putting a lot of time into it. And it's I think the kids are buying in, and it's it's been impressive to see in the maturation of them in just the 2 months we've been together in the summer.
So who are we talking about?
So Mo Young, who was a JV coach last year, first time in our program, brought him up to work with the offense. Brendan, we kind of promoted him to work with the defense. And then we got a new teacher who's coming to the Sioux from out west, whose name is Rick Stupak, and he hasn't. He's been a coach in, I think it was Oregon. He's been out there, and he's got some UP ties, and wanted to come back closer to Escanaba, I believe is where he's got some family. So he took a social studies job, and I met with him a couple times, and he'll coach our lines. So yeah, it's all brand new. It's all different, and I keep expecting to walk into the coach's office and see Gordy sitting in his recliner, or Matt, fretting in his locker, or Brad just chilling out with his sun hat on, and those guys aren't there anymore. So it's going to be different, and like I said, there's going to be a lot of different things that we're going to have to work out for practice and for games as well.
We've been talking about a lot of the positive things that you do in the school, both coaching, administration. You have the opportunity to impact a lot of kids' lives. One thing I would like to address with you, though, is what I perceive to be a major character flaw, and this is
in me,
in you, of course, and that is your love of that team.
Oh boy,
over to the west a little bit.
Here we go.
Come on, man. Why the Packers?
I'll just tell you that I was just there last Saturday too.
That doesn't surprise me.
No, my niece works in Madison, or lives in south of Madison, and her boyfriend works in Madison. So we said, well, I'll go down and visit him. And I hadn't been to Green Bay in, gosh, probably 15 years. So we stopped and saw the new Titletown area. My parents are from Escanaba. There was a time when, if you watch football in Escanaba, the Packer games were on more than the Lions games were, because they were way down in Detroit, and it was kind of the cutoff line. Even when I was at Engadine, we would get a lot of Packer games on the TV stations.
Now, how old were you when your parents left Escanaba?
Well, I was born in Ypsilanti. My dad was going to playing football at Eastern, and then he got a job so they left in '66. I was born in '67. We moved to the Sioux in '70. But like the first probably half dozen pro games I went to was at Lambeau Field, and I'd gone. I mean, all my mom's side, well, majority of my mom's brothers, because she's from a big family, they were Packer fans. So we would go over, whether it was a holiday or whether it was just a reason to go to Escanaba for a weekend visit. Like I said, we'd hook up with them, and a lot of my cousins were Packer fans. And then, like I said, the first games I ever went to were in Green Bay, and I got to go to the Packer Hall of Fame, and I got to see the green and gold, and I just that was it. So I'm not a Brewers fan. I'm not a Bucks fan. I just had this argument with my buddy Al Anderson the other day, because I told him that I was in Green Bay, and he said, I just don't get it. Explain it to me. So I basically told him what I told you, which is I love the Tigers, I love the Pistons, I love the Red Wings. I just happen to love the Packers.
Because the alternative is the Lions.
The alternative is the Lions. And somebody, we were having this group conversation. Somebody said, well, that's because the Packers were, good in the 70s and 80s. I'm like, no. They were just as bad, if not worse, than the Lions.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, you're telling me you were a fan of Green Bay during the Lynn Dickey years.
Lynn Dickey was my favorite player.
Why does that not surprise
Lynn Dickey
me?
So Bart Starr and Lynn Dickey and then Brett Favre were my top three, and that order could change on a daily basis.
Now,
I had jerseys of all those guys.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not
I did not get it. I did not get an Aaron Rodgers jersey, though. So
come on, he's...
Yeah, he's not in my top three. So I mean, he did a lot for Green Bay, but I just I'm about to purchase a Jordan Love jersey, so that I'm gonna see if we can find his way into the top three. I'm not sure.
I know he didn't play for the Vikings.
That's true. That's why Favre is third and not first or second. Star's my guy. He was there, and he played. There the entire career, and Dickey, for the most part, kept them above water in the 70s and 80s. So
now, Your brother knows what side his bread's buttered on.
Yeah, he got tainted by my dad's side of the family, so it's fine though. Like I said, when we have Thanksgiving was listen, last Thanksgiving was a fantastic day because the
I'm,
Packers won. So
I'm sure it was.
yeah, no, it's just
Sure
I
it
mean
was.
I don't know. And listen, if I had to pick a second favorite team, it would be the Lions. I mean I've rooted for them just as long as they weren't playing for Green Bay. So, but yeah, I just got a soft spot for the green and gold. So
Green seems to be a theme with you because
yeah,
now we're going to move on to the college ranks, and you're a Michigan
I
State
am a
guy.
Michigan State fan. Mostly because, for the same reason. First couple of college games I ever went to were at Spartan Stadium. My brother obviously played baseball for Michigan State, so I spent a lot of time in East Lansing. And um, yeah, I mean, and again, Michigan's my second favorite team. Just when they play each other, it just happens to be that way. So
Now, you went to school at
I went to school at Central.
okay,
Yeah.
which were you there during the years when they were beating Michigan State? Or was that
It
before?
was right around the end of the time that I was there. My athletic highlight as far as who was at Central was Dan Marley was playing basketball at Central when I went there, and he,
Okay.
and he was he went on to have a great career as a professional. So Central was decent, but there was a couple of years, yeah, when Michigan State wasn't so good. And I actually went to one of the games at Spartan Stadium. I think it was in the late '80s, early '90s where Central beat them. So
Where did you live at Central?
I lived in Emmons Hall.
Emmons Hall. Where is Emmons Hall?
Emmons Hall is actually it's the closest to the Wayside. So if you know where the Wayside is, yeah.
Sadly, yes.
So we lived on the first floor, so we walked down the back hallway and out the back door. We just had to walk across the parking lot, and the Wayside was there. So
Towers are right there as well.
towers are probably about a block and a half west of Emmons. So it was
Okay.
Emmons, then I think it was Thorpe. I think with the other ones, but we were kind of across the street from the football field and the field house, and like I said, kitty corner to the Wayside. So, yeah,
Okay. Good times, I assume.
yeah. I mean, I went to Lake State for a couple of years, and then went to Central, and I had a buddy down there that I had grown up with here in the Sioux that was looking for a roommate, and I was looking to get out of the Sioux, and it just kind of worked out well. And I actually, and then when I got in the teaching program down there, myself and couple girls from the Sioux and a buddy of mine and a guy that we played intramural football for. We were the first 5 to ever student teach in Sault Ste. Marie from Central.
Really?
They had never done that, but we had 2 girls that that had gone to school with. A buddy of mine, Pete Bush, who had played ball with for years and we grown up together. We were all at Central, and then a friend of ours that we played intramural ball with, and he was a Uper because he had a Uper fan because he had a cabin in Trout Lake. So we went to the education people at Central and said, "Listen, if we can make this happen, can you let a student teach in the Sioux?" And they said, "Okay, but you got to got to fill in, all the paperwork and get this all taken care of and talk to the administration." And so, this is when Dave Gagne was the principal at the middle school. This is when my dad was still teaching at the middle school. This would have been 1990, and Central said, "Okay, you can go." So it was great.
Now, at the time, Central was the premier teaching school in the state. Is that correct?
It was. It was. We had a lot of friends. We had a lot of people that we knew that had gone down there to teach. I don't know if it's as prominent in education. I'm not sure anywhere is, honestly, Scott, but I'm not sure it's as prominent in education as it was maybe, 30 years ago.
Well, I know Saginaw Valley sort of, I don't know if overtook them is the right word.
Well, I think if you look at Saginaw Valley and Grand Valley, they've both grown, and especially in that department. And so I think, we see a lot of people like Brad Bovin, who just moved. He was a Grand Valley grad, and we've had a couple people that have gone to those schools. So, I don't know what's going on with Central because I know I was just having this conversation the other day that I think their population is down, and I'm not sure if it's because of that program or whatever it is. But no, I love Central. Mount Pleasant was a great town to go to college with or two, and it was only 3 hours away and just far enough to be away from everybody, but come home if I needed to. So it was a good experience. I made a lot of good friends when I was down there.
When was the last time you were there in Mount Pleasant?
Probably when Alex played softball in Alma.
Okay, so I need you to rank your top 3 places in Mount Pleasant to go eat.
Well, listen, you're asking me the wrong question to go eat. I mean, you should be asking me. No, I'm just kidding. I was going to say the top 3 places to go drink, but
Well, we all know what those are.
no. Like I said, I don't know. I haven't been there enough. Actually, I went to a concert. Went to a concert at the
When you
casino
were
last
there,
year.
I'm talking about.
Oh Lord, that's a great question. See, I went there as an undergrad, and then I went back as a grad student for 3 summers. That was a little bit more fun than the undergrad years, honestly, because I actually had money. But I don't know, Scott. Gosh, I wish I could tell you. I mean, I just know that there were places that we went to. I mean, that was my first exposure to Taco Bell, so that would be my number one because we had never had a Taco Bell anywhere. That was as far north as I remember Taco Bell being. So, I mean, we always went out of our way to go there, whether it was and that was honestly the first time that I had Domino's pizza.
Really?
Oh yeah, we Domino's used to have it was like a medium or large for $5. We would gorge on that. So
Do you remember Piscinello's Pizza down there?
I do. Pisanello's was great. Yes,
That is one of my
yes,
favorites.
yes. That was in the downtown area. I really liked. Actually, that's funny that you say that because the last time I went down there, I went to look and see if it was still there. So
It
yeah,
is,
that was
isn't
yeah, it is still there.
Yeah. The clock,
Yep.
but that was always after the wayside, so
Yep.
that was sometimes good, sometimes
Right. I don't think that's there anymore.
No.
I'm trying to think because I think a Buffalo Wild Wings went in that area, and I'm not sure. And that was the first time I'd ever seen a Wild Wings.
Yeah, that was the first Buffalo Wild Wings I'd
Right.
ever seen as well.
Yeah.
That used to be I'm trying to think. It was a very CMU oriented place. Like it had CMU posters and
Right.
painting,
Right.
but I cannot remember the name of it.
Well, I mean, that's probably a good sign that you and I are both getting older because I have really vague memories of those places in Mount Pleasant, other than some of the places you mentioned. Like I said, and a lot of places that we used to go to, aren't there anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of places that like when I took a tour, like when I took the kids through Mount Pleasant a couple years ago, there was plenty of places where I was going to point out what they used to be or what it was or supposed to be, and it wasn't there anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah. But it's grown. I mean, it's grown. They've done some nice things to it, and the towers are completely different now. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things where you keep trying to get back, but you just never.
That's not
do.
always easy to do.
No, it's
you
not.
know?
It's not, especially now.
That is true. You coach the track team, girls track. Is
Yep.
that
Yep.
still the case? As long as we're talking about some of my issues with you, this brings up another one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the time limit on this show?
Oh, there is no time
Okay.
limit. Doors are locked. You're not getting out.
Okay.
My older daughter Callie,
Yes.
senior year, she can't pitch anymore because her shoulder has just been surgically repaired.
Yep.
She comes home one day and she says to me, "Dad, I think I'm going to run track." I said, "How are you going to run track? You can't move. You can't move your shoulder."
Yep.
"Well, I'm going to throw disc." I said, "Correct me if I'm wrong, but the disc weighs at least as much as a softball, and you are not allowed to throw that. So
Right.
how are you going to throw the disc?" And she says, "Well, Mr. Menard said he'd show me how to throw it left-handed."
Yes. Well, that was just I don't think I said I would show because I think I said Coach Bovin could show you, but I said why don't you try it left-handed? You're strong. You're a good athlete. Why don't you try it left-handed?
The background that you need to know for this, and maybe you already know it, is please forgive me to all of our track fans at the UP Sports Den. Track is maybe not my favorite sport.
Fair.
And my least favorite event is going to the UP finals, which Rob made me do 4 consecutive years.
Which you're going to now mention the fact that your daughter qualified for the UP finals throwing left-handed.
Throwing left-handed
Yep.
in her first year.
Yep.
Throwing the disc.
And the best part about that is she did say at one point, "I wish I would have done this earlier." And I said, "Oh, good. At least that's good to know that you had a good experience."
Take one more small chunk out of your
Right,
dad's heart.
right.
Yeah.
No, that was great. And then, like I said, I mean, with your daughter and we've had a lot of great throwers, and that was really more a tribute to Brad Bovin, and it's unfortunate that he's gone. But yeah, I mean, and that's just like football, Scott. I mean, we get kids that decide they want to maybe if they can't do something else or just want to try it, and then they just amazed how much success they have. I just think there's so many athletes walking the halls of Sioux High that just don't give enough sports a try. Pat and I did kind of a informal study, and we got 800 kids in the school. We figured that our students who play are about 15%. But that's another great example of the fact that we've got fantastic athletes just roaming the halls that if they would just give something a try, they'd be surprised how much success we've had.
Well, it's a shame that I mean, obviously some of the sports have to be in the same season.
Right.
You don't really have an option there, but it actually probably would have been fantastic for Callie had she been able to play softball and track at the same time.
And it is tough because we're not a Rockford, we're not a Traverse City Central where you have a big pool of kids to choose from. Like I know in the spring, we have girls soccer, we have softball, JV, and varsity, and then we have track. We're lucky enough to be able to have full teams of 3 of those, which is the credit to the amount of female athletes we have. But it's tough, and you hate to make a kid make a choice. And so I will say that Lisa and Linda, when she was the coach, and our soccer coaches, and I think myself, and we've been very flexible in the last couple of years to have some conversations, say, hey, this kid wants to do both. Can we make that happen? And like last year in track, Annabelle Fazzari and Taryn Pratt both played soccer and softball, and they both placed the DP finals and had a good soccer season. So the potential for that to happen is there.
Well, and I think I agree with you too. It's a shame that when you're talking about that percentage of kids that are playing sports is the same, it's the same kids playing 3 and 4 sports as opposed to raising that percentage and just having more kids in general.
Right. But, I guess maybe the flip side of that is we do have a lot of pretty amazing 3-sport athletes. And I really think playing 3 sports really prepares you for anything, because you do have, you're not always the stud in every sport, and sometimes you have to take a lesser role, and sometimes you have to be more of a chemistry person, or you have to be a grinder, or you just have to be, somebody that's going to help the team. And, and I think we're lucky in that way, but it would be nice to get probably a few more kids out just to be able to beef up the numbers for everybody.
Yeah, that would be a good thing.
Right.
In preparation for the season, all sports are required to fundraise nowadays.
Right.
What do you guys have coming up to help your program?
So a number of years ago, and it actually was started, I believe, by Greg Rambo, is that we work with Adrenaline Fundraising, and we have a sales rep that comes up, and he goes around our community, whether it's Sault Ste. Marie or businesses in Brimley or Cedarville or Pickford, and we sell a discount card for $20, but it's deals to just about every fast food place in town. It's got deals to golf courses, Dunham's. Gosh, I wish I could think of more now, but just what it is, it's essentially just a card that you can use every day for a year, and it's only $20. Like we always laugh that a couple of our coaches love the card because one of the discounts on the card is to Domino's, which is you buy one large, get one free, and you can use it every day of the year. And I said that our coaches get their money's worth on that card on the first day. But it's been really successful for us, and I think it's a nice way to get local businesses involved with our program, because that's not always easy to do. With everything, it's tough we talked about this before, with travel, and we have to travel to St. Clair Shores. That's not a cheap trip.
Right.
And we'd like to be able to take a charter bus to Escanaba. And so, a lot of times our fundraising, that's essentially what we're trying to do is just to keep us, from having to take, and not that there's anything wrong with the school bus, but let's be honest, nobody wants to go on a trip, 3 hours or more on a school bus, and it's tough.
Well, I mean, a good athletic director would make sure that you never had to be on a school bus.
Listen, I will not say anything bad about our AD because Pat has done a fantastic job of transportation for us.
Pat, that is not what he said while we were off the air.
That's funny. No, but I mean, and like every coach that knows, you have to raise money because, you want to get things and you want to be able to travel and be comfortable. And, and equipment isn't any cheaper. And so the school does a good job of working up with us with that. But there are some things that we would like to have for the program, and the fundraising allows us to do that.
It's always worked out well for us because the Omens live right around the corner from us, and
Right.
so whenever there's a football fundraiser, we buy their stuff. Whenever there's a softball fundraiser,
Right.
they buy our stuff, and so I think we probably break even on it. But both programs get the help.
Yeah, and you know that you've been around enough. You have to do that. My daughter played softball, and my son played football and track, and so you have to. You're going to spend some money, and you're going to make some money, and we always try to take care of each other with coaches as far as if hockey has a fundraiser, or softball, or somebody else, because we just all know we're in the same boat.
All right. Well, hey, we really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on here. Hopefully,
well,
I'm not the 55th guest the next time I come on here.
We'll have to see how your schedule shapes up.
Oh, it's always about the wins and losses.
Just getting you to pick up a phone call is like I feel like I should be playing the lottery tonight.
Well, yeah, it's only going to get busier starting next Monday. So
well, I know. I had to go through your wife to get
That's true.
your attention today.
Yeah,
so
yeah, somebody's got to work now. I got to go back to work now. So sometimes I don't
here we go.
Phone. But no, I'm not complaining. But no, I appreciate being on here and give me some opportunities to talk about some of the things that I'm doing and some of the things that are going on at Sioux High, and hopefully we have some success and we can talk again soon.
Well, we will be talking again soon for the print version of the football preview, but
okay,
we'll see. We'll see how it goes, and hopefully we'll have you on again real soon.
Absolutely, that'd be great. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to this week's version of the DenCast. We're once again happy to have Coach Scott Menard here with us to talk a little football and other things in general. Please like us on Facebook, share us on social media. The more eyes and ears we get on this, the better off we all are. Everybody have a great night, and we'll talk to you again in about a week. Thanks.